this video I'll be continuing with the C# .NET video tutorials. So in this video I'll be talking about inheritance, so we'll just be moving on to some more concepts. So I've created a class here. It's called just a form, a normal form one. Then we have a rectangle class, and then we have a box class. So we'll just talk about some notes. So when you create an instance of a derived class, the base class constructor is executed. First, so we talked about this in the notes a bit. So and then the derived class constructor is executed. So when you create an object of, for example, let's say that we have box. So public class box inherits from rectangle. So when you create an object of the box class, pretty much the rectangle class's constructor is executed first. I know we don't have anything here yet, but we will. And then the derived class constructor is executed. So in all the examples that we have discussed so far, the base class and the derived class have had parameterless constructors. So when you create an instance of a derived class, the default so I'll just restart that. So when you create an instance of a derived class, by default the base class's parameterless constructor is automatically executed. But what happens if the base class's constructor has parameters, or what happens if the base class has multiple overloaded constructors and you want to make sure a specific one is called? So in either of these situations, the derived class constructor must explicitly call the base class constructor. So here we'll just do an example of that. So we'll go back to the rectangle class. So here we can say we have two backing fields, so a private int underscore length and a private int underscore width. We have a constructor, so we'll say that we have public rectangle. We'll just call our public and then rectangle. We'll reference the class name. Then here we'll have, so no parameters in the first one. We'll set our dot length backing property, sorry, our backing field. So we have backing fields up here. We'll set it to 0, we'll set both to 0. Then here we'll have a constructor that takes parameters. So we'll say public rectangle, it takes an int length and an int width. So here we'll just point the backing field to the parameter. Then we'll set up the length and width properties, so we'll just say public, the type, so the type is int. So we'll say public int, and then we'll reference length as a capital, no parentheses, and we'll say get, we'll open a block, and then return length. Sorry, return underscore length, so return the backing property. Then set here, and then we'll say underscore length points to value. We'll do the same for the width property, so we'll say public, then the type, then the name width. Then here we'll say get, then return underscore width. And here we'll say set, and then underscore width, or we'll say, sorry, no, set, so underscore width return points to value. So this class holds data about a rectangle. it has length and width properties to store a rectangle's length and width. It also has two constructors. A parameterless constructor that initializes underscore length and underscore width to 0, and a constructor that accepts arguments for length and the width. So now we'll talk about the box class. So the box class inherits from rectangle. It has one field, which is height. So we'll say private, then int, and then underscore, so the type, and then we'll say underscore height. We'll reference a constructor, so we'll say public, then the class name. No parameters here, we'll just set the backing field to 0. So here we'll say public, we'll reference the constructor again. Public box, we'll say it takes int length and an int width, then an int height as well. Then here we'll just set up so there's going to be one extra thing here. So this is kind of a trick. So it's a new concept. So I was going to talk about this. I said, remember, if you watch the playlist, the csharp.net playlist, I said in the notes, there is this part that we'd be talking about later. So this is it here. So it has a colon, then base, and then what it does is it opens a pretty much so I think it's like the super keyword, but in this case so in Java there's a super keyword that you can set up using the superclasses constructor. But here in this case we're saying, okay, we want to just reference the base classes constructor, and we want to set up the parameters from here are actually just going to be set up with the superclasses constructor. So all you have to do is just say colon base, so the base is a keyword, and then here we'll say length, comma width. So we just pass in the same. I think that's what's happening here. We can just see the docs here in a sec. So this is like super. So we'll say Java super equivalent. So instead of super, we have base, and then you have to include this colon, and then usually instead of putting it in the actual block, I guess it's outside. So here we'll say underscore height points to height. And then here we'll have the property, so we'll say that we want to reference public, and then we want to call our type. So public int, and then we'll create a property here with just the capitalization of the backing field. We'll open a block here, and then we'll say that we want to get, open a block, and we want to return height. We want to return underscore height, and then here we'll say set, and then we want to point underscore height to value. So the box class holds data about a rectangular box, which has a length, width, and height. So it has access to the width and height properties in the rectangle, but notice how they're set to private. They could have been set to protected. In this case they're private, but we were able to actually just set up the length and width using the constructor of the superclass, which is confusing, I know, because it's private, and we said that it doesn't inherit the constructor, but it still has access to the base class's constructor, so it's kind of confusing. So the box let's just say that again. So the box class holds data about a rectangular box which has a length, width, and height. the class inherits the length and width properties from the rectangle class and has its own height property. Notice that the box class has two constructors, a parameterless constructor and a parameterized constructor. If you create an instance of the box class calling its parameterless constructor, the rectangle class parameterless constructor will be executed. So if you create an object of the box class without any parameters or any arguments, the rectangle class's parameterless constructor will be executed. So let's just note that down here. So if you create an object of the box class calling its parameterless constructor, so basically if you instantiate a box class without any parameters, or without any parameters, or without any arguments, the rectangle class's parameterless constructor will be executed. So in this case, if we just say, for example, in form 1, that we have a box points a new box. After this statement, the box object's length, width, and height properties will be set to 0. Why is that? Because we have here in box we have the height set to 0 if there's no parameters, which is because when we instantiated this object we didn't include any parameters here. Because usually we'd have commas here with different things in here, but it's empty, as you can see. So in the box class we'll go with the constructor without any parameters. In this case, height gets set to 0, and then also remember the base class's constructor will be executed automatically, so length and width will be set to 0. So if you want to actually use this constructor, you have to you can use the base keyword with the colon and reference the parameters that you want. So now let's look at the box class's parameterized constructor. So we'll go to box here. Did I mess this? Actually, no, that's correct. So it's a little bit tricky. You don't just have to write. So I think it's a little different than Java, just because you don't have to write this. I can't completely remember, but I think you just need to write the parameter in Java that you want, and then you just use the super keyword to reference the other ones. But in this case, you have to, so if you want to instantiate in a box and you want to use the other parameter from the base class, you still have to write it in that case. So you're saying that it takes 3 ints, and the first 2, which are going to be referenced by the same name in this case here, are going to be set using the base keyword, which is going to go to the, basically, it'll go to the base class's constructor. So the constructor has 3 parameters: length, width, and height. So then we have this line here, colon base, taking parameter length, comma width. So the base keyword refers to the base class. This is an explicit call to the base class's parameterized constructor, passing length and width as arguments. To understand how this works, consider the following statement. Okay, so we have another statement. So let's go here to our other box, and here we'll pass in 3 arguments. So box points to new box. Then here we'll pass in, for example, something like that. What's wrong with that? No, sorry, it's the same name. We'll just go with box 2. Okay, Okay, so box2 points a new box and passing in 3 arguments. This statement creates an object of the box class passing 25 to the length parameter, 25 to the width parameter, and 50 to the height parameter. So basically, we'll call the rectangle class's parameterized constructor, passing length and width as arguments. After the rectangle class's constructor executes, the box class constructor resumes execution. The resulting box object's length property will be set to 100. What did we say the length was? 25. Width property will be set to 25, and the height property will be set to 50. So here's a summary of constructor issues and inheritance. When you create an instance of a derived class, the base class constructor is executed first, and then the derived class constructor is executed. When you create an instance of a derived class, when you create an instance of a derived class, by default, the base class's parameter list constructor is automatically executed. If you want a parameterized constructor in the base class to execute, you must explicitly call the derived class's constructor. So if you want a parameterized constructor in the base class to execute, you must explicitly call it from the derived class's constructor by using the base keyword. So :base and then the parameter list. And the derived class's constructor header, so remember it goes underneath as we saw. You might actually be able to do it in the same line. You can try that. If the base class does not have a parameter list constructor, the derived class constructor must use a notation. So if the base class does not have a parameter list constructor, so basically if the base class doesn't have a I believe you need a parameter list constructor in the base class either way. So the derived class, you may get an error if you don't. So if the base class does not have a parameter list constructor, the derived class constructor must use a notation. So you must have, again, :base and then parameter list to call one of the base class's parameterized constructor. So I believe you need to have that. You need to have at least an empty constructor like this. And if you don't, you have to use the :base keyword. So that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. So in the next video, we'll be starting some polymorphism labs and some more notes. So if you want to see the rest of the videos, they're in the csharp.net playlist on my channel. So thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Take care.